She fought to save her husband after he lost his memory, but nothing prepared her for the moment he looked into her eyes and called her twin sister his wife. Emma Parker always knew life could change in an instant. She just never thought it would destroy everything she loved. 1 week ago, she was married to Ethan Cole, a man the world envied. Billionaire CEO, charming, brilliant. But to Emma, he was simply the man who kissed her forehead every morning and whispered promises of forever. Until the phone call. Until the crash that left Ethan in a coma. His sleek black car twisted like a corpse on the side of the highway. Now, Emma stood in the sterile hospital room, her heart pounding as machines beeped steadily beside the man she could barely recognize beneath bruises and bandages. Ethan. Her voice trembled as his eyelids fluttered. Doctors warned her, memory loss is common. Don't panic if he's confused. But nothing could prepare her for what came next. His eyes opened, those familiar steel blue eyes she fell in love with. For a heartbeat, hope surged in her chest. But then he looked at her like she was a stranger. Who are you? Ethan rasped, his voice weak but sharp with suspicion. Emma's breath caught. It's me, Emma, your wife. Confusion twisted his features, and panic clawed at her throat. Before she could speak again, another voice filled the room, soft, sweet, and laced with venom Emma recognized all too well. Ethan, baby, you're awake. Emma's twin sister, Isabel, stepped into view, flawless, poised, wearing Emma's favorite scarf like it belonged to her. Ethan's gaze shifted and softened. A small, broken smile touched his lips. There you are. Emma's world tilted as Isabel moved to his side, gently taking his hand. I was so worried, Isabel whispered, brushing hair from his forehead, a gesture that should have been Emma's. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. Isabel, what are you doing? Isabel didn't even glance her way. Her eyes were locked on Ethan, who stared back at her with something Emma hadn't seen in days, recognition. The doctor cleared his throat awkwardly. Mr. Cole, do you know who this is? Ethan squeezed Isabel's hand weakly. My wife. Emma staggered back, her heart shattering in silence. Isabel finally turned, her expression dripping with false sympathy. I'm so sorry, the accident. He doesn't remember you. Tears blurred Emma's vision, but rage burned hotter. This wasn't confusion. This was opportunism. Isabel had always envied her. The career, the marriage, the life she claimed Emma didn't deserve. And now, fate handed her the perfect lie. Emma's fists clenched. You're not his wife. Isabel's smile was ice. Right now, he thinks I am. And who are you to break his fragile heart? Before Emma could lash out, the doctor intervened, urging calm, warning about stress. But Emma knew one thing. This wasn't just amnesia. It was war, and Isabel was already winning. As Emma left the room, her mind raced. She wasn't going to lose Ethan, not to fate, and definitely not to the sister who'd been waiting her whole life to steal everything Emma loved. If Isabel wanted to play pretend, Emma would remind her who Ethan truly belonged to, even if she had to make him fall in love with her all over again. Emma barely slept. How could she, knowing that just down the hall, her husband was holding her sister's hand, believing Isabel was the woman he married? By morning, whispers had already spread through the hospital staff. Nurses smiled politely at Isabel, offering condolences to Mrs. Cole. Every time Emma corrected them, Isabel's smug glances cut deeper than any words. But Emma wasn't going to watch her life get stolen without a fight. She waited until visiting hours resumed, then pushed open Ethan's door, heart pounding. He sat up now, color returning to his face. For a moment, Emma saw a glimpse of the man she loved. Ethan, she began softly, stepping closer. It's me, Emma. His brow furrowed, cautious. I remember. Isabel told me about you. You're her sister. Emma's stomach twisted. Isabel had already planted her lies. I'm your wife. Emma pressed, pulling a small photo from her pocket. Their wedding day. Ethan in his tailored suit, Emma glowing in white, joy radiating from both. She handed it to him, watching his eyes scan the image. Something flickered, doubt, confusion, but then it was gone. She said, "You try this." Ethan muttered, placing the photo on the bedside table like it meant nothing. Said you were unstable. Emma's blood ran cold. She told you what? That you've always been jealous. Ethan continued, his voice distant. That after our engagement, you try to come between us. She said seeing you might confuse me while I recover. Emma's hands trembled. Isabel hadn't wasted a second. She'd rewritten history, turning Emma into the villain. That's not true. Emma's voice cracked with desperation. Ethan, we build a life together. The door swung open, and Isabel appeared, holding a fresh bouquet of flowers like she hadn't been eavesdropping the entire time. I think you should leave, Isabel said sweetly. The doctor said stress isn't good for his recovery. Emma's heart pounded with fury. You're lying to him. Isabel's eyes glittered with triumph as she moved to Ethan's side, slipping her arm around his. I'm protecting him, she whispered, resting her head against Ethan's shoulder. Ethan flinched slightly, but didn't pull away. Emma felt the walls closing in. Logic wouldn't save her. Isabel controlled the narrative now. But as she turned to leave, her gaze fell back on the wedding photo sitting beside Ethan's bed. A detail caught her eye. Her hand and Ethan's, both wearing matching wedding bands. Except, Ethan's hand now was bare. Emma's heart raced. Where's your ring? She asked, voice tight. Ethan glanced down, confused. I don't know. Isabel's smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for Emma to see the truth. She'd removed it. Emma stormed out of the room, rage boiling beneath her skin. This wasn't just a game of pretending anymore. Isabel was systematically erasing every piece of Emma from Ethan's life. But Isabel had underestimated her. Emma wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to plead. She was going to prove who she was. And she knew exactly where to start, with a secret only Ethan and his real wife could know. A memory Isabel couldn't fake. Emma stood outside the hospital, gripping the small velvet box like it was a weapon. Because in a way it was. Inside was the key to a memory Isabel could never steal. A moment so private, so personal that if anything could break through Ethan's fog, it was this. Their secret. 2 years ago, on a rainy anniversary night, Ethan had surprised Emma with a custom-made locket, engraved not with their initials, but with a phrase only they understood. When the world forgets us, we remember. It was a promise, a vow that no matter how chaotic life became, they'd hold on to what mattered. Now, Emma prayed that promise still lived somewhere inside him. She walked back into Ethan's room, her heart pounding with every step. Isabel wasn't there, probably off basking in her stolen spotlight. Good. Emma needed Ethan alone. He looked up as she entered, guarded but curious. I thought Isabel said you'd be leaving, he muttered. Emma forced a calm smile, though her insides twisted. I just need 5 minutes. Before he could object, she placed the velvet box in his hand. What's this? He asked, frowning. Open it. Ethan hesitated, then flipped it open. The silver locket gleamed under the sterile hospital lights. His fingers brushed over it, and for a split second, Emma saw something flicker behind his eyes, recognition, or maybe just the ghost of it. He read the inscription aloud, voice barely above a whisper. When the world forgets us. His brow furrowed deeper, his breathing uneven. Emma stepped closer, her voice soft but urgent. You gave that to me, Ethan. On the night we danced in the rain because our dinner reservation was ruined. You said it didn't matter where we were, as long as we remembered each other. Ethan's hand trembled slightly as he closed the locket, his gaze distant. I see flashes, he admitted, frustration creeping into his tone. But then it's gone. Emma's heart ached, but she pressed on. That's because it's real. Because I'm your wife, Ethan. Isabel wasn't there. She doesn't know about this. Only we do. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy, fragile. Then the door creaked open. Isabel. Her eyes landed on the locket, and Emma watched as her perfect facade cracked. What is that? Isabel asked sharply, crossing the room. Ethan looked between them, confusion returning like a storm cloud. Emma held her ground. Something you'll never understand. Isabel's smile was tight, but her eyes were pure venom. Ethan, she's manipulating you. You said yourself, your memories are fragile. Ethan rubbed his temples, clearly overwhelmed. Isabel seized the moment, wrapping her arm around him. You need rest. Don't let her confuse you. Emma's pulse raced. She couldn't let Isabel twist this. Not again. But before she could speak, Isabel turned with a cruel glint in her eye. Besides, Ethan and I have some news. Emma froze. What are you talking about? Isabel's smile widened as she dropped the bombshell. We're renewing our vows tomorrow. Emma's breath caught like a punch to the chest. Ethan looked dazed, but nodded slowly. She said it would help to remind me of us. Emma felt the room spin. This wasn't just a lie anymore. Isabel was solidifying it. If those vows happened, the world would believe Isabel was truly Mrs. Cole, and Emma would be erased forever. But as Isabel basked in her victory, Emma's shock hardened into resolve. Let her plan a wedding, because Emma was done playing fair. If Isabel wanted a show, Emma would give her one she'd never forget. Emma never imagined she'd be crashing her own husband's wedding. But as she stood at the back of the lavish hospital garden, transformed overnight into a mockery of a vow renewal, she realized Isabel wasn't just stealing her husband. She was rewriting Emma's entire life. White roses lined the aisle, a string quartet played softly, and in the center stood Ethan, dressed in a crisp suit, looking every bit the groom. Beside him, Isabel beamed in a designer gown Emma recognized. It was her dress, the one Emma wore on her real wedding day. Emma's hands curled into fists. This wasn't just deception. This was annihilation. Guests filled the seats, business partners, media, friends, everyone believing Isabel's carefully crafted story that Mrs. Cole was simply helping Ethan recover lost memories. No one questioned why Emma, the real wife, was nowhere in sight. But Emma wasn't staying silent. As the officiant began speaking, Emma stepped forward, her voice slicing through the ceremony like a blade. Stop this farce. Gasps rippled through the crowd as all eyes turned to her. Ethan's gaze locked on Emma, confusion clouding his features, but beneath it, something else. A flicker of doubt. Isabel's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, wrapping her arm around Ethan possessively. Security, she snapped, her voice dripping with false outrage. Get her out of here. Two guards moved toward Emma, but she raised a hand, pulling out a document. I wouldn't, Emma said coldly. Not unless you want to explain this. She held up their marriage certificate, the original, signed, sealed, undeniable proof. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Isabel's face paled, but her eyes gleamed with desperation. She forged that. Ethan, don't listen. She's unstable, just like I told you. Emma's heart pounded as she turned to Ethan, forcing him to look at her. Think, Ethan. Why would Isabel hide your wedding ring? Why did she never mention the locket? You feel it, don't you? Something's wrong. Ethan's hand instinctively touched the locket still hanging around his neck. He hadn't taken it off since Emma gave it to him. I don't know what's real, he admitted, his voice strained. Isabel's mask cracked. Panic seeped into her perfect exterior. But before Emma could press further, a sharp voice rang out from behind the crowd. She's right, Ethan. Everyone turned as Mr. Grayson, Ethan's longtime lawyer and family friend, stepped forward. He held a folder in his hands, his expression grim. I received an anonymous tip this morning. Grayson continued, his eyes locking on Isabel. It seems someone's been transferring assets into their own name. Emma's stomach dropped as realization hit. This wasn't just about jealousy. Isabel wasn't playing for love. She was playing for power. Ethan frowned. What are you talking about? Grayson opened the folder, revealing documents, bank transfers, forged signatures. Your wife has been siphoning your fortune while you've been recovering. Isabel's eyes flashed with fury as she lunged toward Grayson, but security intercepted her. Let go of me, she screamed, her composure shattering. I was protecting him. It was all mine to begin with. Ethan staggered back, betrayal dawning in his eyes. Emma watched, heart aching, as the man she loved realized he'd been manipulated on every level. Isabel thrashed against the guards, her gaze landing on Emma with pure hatred. This isn't over, she spat as they dragged her away. He'll never remember you. Never. Silence fell over the garden as the guests whispered and scattered. Ethan stood alone, clutching the locket, his world unraveling. Emma took a cautious step toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan." He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time, Emma saw more than confusion. She saw pain. "I don't know who to believe," he admitted, his voice broken. "But I know I don't want to be lied to anymore." Emma nodded, tears brimming. "Then let me help you remember the truth." As they stood amidst the ruins of Isabel's deception, Emma knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of rebuilding what was stolen. The scandal hit headlines before Emma and Ethan even left the hospital grounds. Heiress exposed. Twin sisters plot to steal CEO's fortune uncovered. Photos of Isabel being dragged away in handcuffs flooded social media, while Emma's phone buzzed nonstop with reporters begging for a statement. But none of that mattered, because Ethan Cole, the man Emma had fought so hard to save, sat beside her in silence, staring out the window of the car as if the world outside didn't exist. He hadn't said much since the fake ceremony collapsed. His hand absently toyed with the locket around his neck, but every time Emma tried to speak, he'd shut down. When they arrived at the penthouse, their home, Ethan hesitated at the door like he was stepping into a stranger's life. Emma unlocked it, heart pounding. Everything was exactly as they left it before the accident. Their wedding photos on the wall, the faint scent of Ethan's cologne lingering in the air. "Does any of this feel familiar?" Emma asked softly. Ethan wandered through the living room, fingers grazing the back of the couch, the bookshelf, the framed memories of a life he couldn't recall. "Pieces," he admitted, "like a dream I can't hold on to." Emma swallowed her disappointment. She wanted to believe that bringing him home would trigger something, but recovery wasn't a fairy tale. She followed him into the study, where Ethan's gaze landed on a locked drawer in his desk. Without thinking, he reached for the key taped beneath the drawer, a habit muscle memory hadn't erased. The lock clicked open, revealing a stack of letters and a small black notebook. Ethan frowned, pulling it out. "What's this?" Emma didn't recognize it. "I don't know. You always kept that drawer private." Ethan flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. Then he stopped, his face pale. Emma stepped closer. "Ethan, what is it?" He handed her the notebook, open to a page marked with a date, 2 weeks before the accident. Scrawled in Ethan's handwriting were words that made Emma's blood run cold. "Isabel knows too much. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident." Emma's heart pounded as she read it again, disbelief flooding her chest. "You suspected her," Emma whispered. "You knew she was after you." Ethan nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "I just don't remember why." Before Emma could process the weight of that revelation, Ethan's phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. He answered hesitantly, putting it on speaker. A distorted voice filled the room. "You thought taking Isabel down ended this." Emma's stomach twisted. Ethan stiffened. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled darkly. "She wasn't working alone. And now, you're both targets." The line went dead. Silence suffocated the room. Emma's mind raced. Isabel wasn't smart enough to orchestrate everything alone. She was impulsive, reckless. But if someone else was involved, someone's still pulling strings. Ethan closed the notebook, his eyes meeting Emma's for the first time with clarity and fear. "We didn't just survive betrayal," he said quietly. "We walked into a bigger game." Emma's pulse quickened, but her resolve hardened. She had fought to get Ethan back. She wouldn't lose him again. "Then we find out who's behind this," Emma said, her voice steady. Together, as night fell over the city, Emma realized the battle for Ethan's heart was only the beginning. Now, they were fighting for their lives. Emma never thought she'd feel fear walking through her own home. But as she and Ethan sat in the penthouse study, the shadows seemed heavier, every sound sharper. Somewhere out there, someone was still watching them. Someone who wanted Ethan silenced long before the accident ever happened. Ethan stared at the black notebook like it held a ticking bomb. "We need help," he muttered. "Someone we can trust." Emma almost laughed, bitter and exhausted. "After everything with Isabel? Who's left?" Ethan hesitated, then picked up his phone. "Grayson." He's been with my family for years. If anyone can trace that call, it's him. Emma wasn't convinced. After Isabel's betrayal, loyalty felt like a fantasy. But they had no better option. Within the hour, Mr. Grayson arrived, calm, professional, carrying his ever-present briefcase. His sharp eyes flicked between Emma and Ethan, reading the tension immediately. "I heard about the call," Grayson said, settling into the leather chair. "You did the right thing contacting me." Ethan handed him the notebook. "You need to find out who Isabel was working with." Grayson scanned the pages, his brow furrowing. These entries suggest blackmail, maybe even corporate espionage. Emma folded her arms, watching Grayson closely. "Can you trace the number?" Grayson nodded. "I'll have my team on it by morning." But something in his tone made Emma's skin prickle. Too smooth, too rehearsed. After Grayson left, Emma paced the study while Ethan leaned back, rubbing his temples. "We can trust him," Ethan said quietly, sensing her doubt. "Can we?" Emma shot back. "Isabel fooled everyone. What if this goes deeper?" Ethan didn't argue, because deep down, he wasn't sure either. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every interaction, every moment Grayson had been around during their marriage. He was always present, always too involved. Restless, she got up and wandered into Ethan's office, hoping to distract herself by digging through old files. That's when she found it. An email buried in Ethan's archive folders. It was from Grayson, dated a month before the accident. Transfer of assets confirmed. Once Cole is out of the way, Isabel will assume control as discussed. Emma's blood ran cold. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the chain of messages. Grayson had been orchestrating the entire scheme with Isabel. The accident wasn't chance. It was a failed attempt to eliminate Ethan and seize control of his empire. "Ethan," Emma called out, her voice breaking. He rushed in, eyes widening as she showed him the emails. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of betrayal settling like lead in the room. "He's coming back tomorrow," Ethan whispered, horror creeping into his voice. Emma's mind raced. Grayson was playing both sides, pretending to help while tying up loose ends. And now they were his final targets. "We can't stay here," Emma said, grabbing the notebook and the printed emails. "We need to disappear before he realizes we know." Ethan's jaw clenched, anger flashing in his eyes. "I'm done running." Emma placed a hand on his chest, her voice firm but pleading. "This isn't about pride. It's survival." Reluctantly, Ethan nodded. As they packed essentials and prepared to vanish, Emma glanced back at the life they were leaving behind. A penthouse filled with memories Ethan couldn't recall and betrayals they'd never forget. Before they left, Ethan grabbed the locket from his nightstand, fastening it around his neck. "I may not remember everything," he said quietly, "but I remember enough to know I trust you." It wasn't a full heart, but it was a start. As they disappeared into the night, Emma knew this wasn't just about exposing Grayson. It was about reclaiming their future, one step ahead of a man who had already tried to erase them once. Emma had never imagined she'd be on the run with a husband who barely remembered her, hunted by the man who once handled their wedding contracts. But fear had long since turned into something sharper: determination. In a small, rented apartment far from the city skyline, Emma and Ethan plotted the downfall of the man who tried to erase them. Grayson thought they were weak, scattered, but Emma knew his type: powerful, arrogant, and convinced no one could touch him. That's exactly why he'd never see the trap coming. "We leak the emails," Ethan suggested, pacing the room. "Go public, expose everything." Emma shook her head. "Not enough. He'll spin it, claim they're fake. We need proof he admits it himself." Ethan frowned. "You're suggesting we bait him?" Emma's lips curled into a grim smile. "Exactly." Hours later, using an encrypted phone, Ethan sent Grayson a message. "We know everything. Meet us tonight. Alone, or the evidence goes viral." The reply came swiftly. "You're making a mistake." 10 p.m., the old marina. When night fell, Emma and Ethan arrived at the deserted docks, a place Grayson once used for private deals. Emma's heart pounded as they hid a recording device nearby, every sense on high alert. At exactly 10 p.m., Grayson's sleek car pulled up, He stepped out, calm and collected, as if this was just another negotiation. "I expected better from you, Ethan," Grayson called out into the shadows. "Running away? That's not your style." Ethan emerged first, shoulders squared. "Funny, I don't remember my style these days." Emma followed, her gaze locked on Grayson. "We know you planned the accident. You and Isabel." Grayson sighed, as if they were children who'd stumbled onto a secret too big to handle. "And what will you do with that knowledge?" he asked, smirking. "Go to the police?" "Without hard evidence, it's your word against mine. And let's face it, Ethan's word isn't exactly reliable right now." Ethan's jaw clenched, but Emma spoke first. "We don't need the police," she said. "We just needed you to confirm it." Grayson's smile faltered as Emma nodded toward the hidden recorder, its tiny red light blinking from beneath a crate. For the first time, true anger flashed across his face. "You think that's enough to stop me?" Grayson growled, stepping closer. Suddenly, a sharp click echoed, Ethan raising a gun they'd hidden in their bag. "Take another step," Ethan warned, his voice cold, "and we'll see if I remember how to pull the trigger." Grayson froze, calculating. But Emma knew men like him didn't surrender easily. Sure enough, Grayson's hand twitched toward his jacket, where Emma had no doubt a weapon waited. Before he could reach it, flashing lights bathed the dock in blue and red. Police cars screeched to a halt. Grayson's eyes widened as officers swarmed, weapons drawn. Emma's smile was pure satisfaction. "We sent the recording live the moment you confessed." As Grayson was wrestled into cuffs, he snarled, "This isn't over. You have no idea who you're really up against." Ethan lowered the gun, breathing hard as the weight of survival finally hit him. Emma moved to his side, her hand slipping into his. For once, Ethan didn't pull away. As the police dragged Grayson into the night, Emma knew they'd won this battle. But his final words echoed in her mind. "You have no idea who you're really up against." Because in the world they lived in, enemies had shadows longer than the truth. But for now, Emma had Ethan back, and that was worth every war still to come. For the first time in weeks, Emma breathed without fear. Grayson was behind bars. Isabel's betrayal was public. The threats that once loomed over their lives had finally been dragged into the light. But peace, Emma learned, was fragile. Ethan stood by the penthouse window, staring out at the city he once ruled with effortless confidence. The locket still hung around his neck, but his expression was distant, lost somewhere between past and present. "Are you okay?" Emma asked softly, approaching him. Ethan didn't answer right away. His fingers traced the edge of the locket, eyes unfocused. Then he spoke, quiet but heavy. "They're coming back." Emma's heart skipped. "Your memories?" Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. Flashes at first, then everything. A surge of hope filled her chest, but it vanished the moment she saw the pain in his eyes. "What is it?" she whispered. Ethan finally turned to face her, and Emma's stomach twisted at the torment written across his face. "I remember the fights," he said bitterly. "The late nights. The distance between us before the accident." Emma's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. The return of not just love, but the cracks they'd carefully hidden beneath perfect photos and polite smiles. "I remember thinking maybe we rushed into marriage, that we were living like strangers in the same house." Emma's throat tightened. "Ethan, we were under pressure. The company, the media," but Ethan shook his head. "No, I was pulling away long before Isabel got involved. That's why she saw an opening." Emma's chest ached. She'd fought so hard to bring him back, only to realize that before the accident, they'd already been falling apart. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So what are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling. "That none of this mattered? That saving you was a mistake?" Ethan's gaze softened, guilt flickering across his face. "No, I'm saying I don't want to go back to who I was." Emma blinked, confused. Ethan stepped closer, taking her hands in his, a gesture that felt both familiar and brand new. "Losing my memory, it forced me to see you without the baggage, without ego. You fought for me when I didn't even know who I was. Not because of vows or appearances, but because you still believed in us." Emma's tears finally fell, but this time they carried relief, not sorrow. Ethan cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. I remember everything now, Emma. The good and the bad. But more than that, I remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. A shaky laugh escaped her lips. Took a car crash and a criminal conspiracy to remind you. Huh? Ethan smiled, a real, unguarded smile she hadn't seen in so long. Guess I've always been stubborn. They stood there, the weight of the past weeks melting into something neither of them expected. A second chance. But before the moment could settle, Emma's phone buzzed on the counter. A message. No number. Just a single line. Grayson was just the beginning. Emma's breath hitched as Ethan read over her shoulder. The locket around his neck felt heavier now, not as a memory, but as a warning. Their battle was over, but the war had deeper roots. Ethan met her gaze, resolve hardening between them. Whatever comes next, he said firmly, we face it together. Emma nodded, her fear replaced by something stronger. Because this time, they weren't fighting for lost memories. They were fighting for the future they refused to let anyone steal again. Weeks passed, but Emma knew life would never return to what it once was. And maybe that was a good thing. The headlines faded. Isabel remained in custody, her name now synonymous with betrayal and greed. Grayson's empire crumbled as more evidence surfaced, partners turning against him to save themselves. But even as the dust settled, Emma and Ethan lived with the quiet understanding that peace was temporary. Some enemies didn't hide in courtrooms. They hid in shadows, waiting. Yet for now, they had something stronger than fear. Each other. Emma stood on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the sun dip below the skyline. The cool breeze tugged at her hair as Ethan stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder, the familiar weight grounding her. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't lost my memory? Ethan asked quietly. Emma smiled faintly. We probably would have kept pretending everything was fine until it wasn't. Ethan nodded, his breath warm against her skin. Strange, isn't it? That forgetting you reminded me of how much I needed you. Emma turned to face him, her fingers tracing the edge of the locket still hanging around his neck. Strange, she echoed, but maybe necessary. They stood in silence, the kind that felt comfortable now, no longer filled with unsaid words or distant hearts. Ethan's phone buzzed on the table inside, but neither of them moved to check it. Some calls could wait. But when Emma finally glanced at the screen, a chill ran down her spine. A message. You think you've escaped. But secrets like his don't stay buried forever. No name, no hint of who sent it. Just a reminder that while Isabel and Grayson were gone, the game wasn't over. Ethan followed her gaze, his jaw tightening as he read the message. I'm done living in fear, he said firmly. Emma nodded, her heart steady. So am I. Instead of panicking, they deleted the message, not out of ignorance, but out of defiance. Let whoever was watching know one thing. They weren't victims anymore. That night, as they sat together on the couch, Ethan reached for Emma's hand. I've been thinking, he began, a rare hint of nervousness in his voice. Emma raised a brow. About what? Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket. Not velvet, but simple, unassuming. Inside were 2 new rings. Since our first vows were nearly erased, maybe it's time we make new ones. Ones no one can steal, fake, or manipulate. Emma's throat tightened, emotions crashing over her. This wasn't the same man she married years ago, and she wasn't the same woman. They'd been broken, tested, betrayed, but they'd survived. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. Yes, let's write our own story this time. Ethan slid the ring on her finger. No audience, no cameras, no contracts. Just them. As they sealed it with a kiss, Emma knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Shadows of the past still lingered, and threats would come again. But now, they weren't defined by what they'd lost. They were defined by what they refused to give up. Each other. And somewhere, far beyond the city lights, another phone buzzed. A figure watched their names appear on the screen. A reminder that unfinished business always had a way of resurfacing. But that's a story for another day. For now, Emma and Ethan had finally reclaimed what mattered most. Not just love, but freedom.